Okay, thank you everyone who joined my talk. So today, first, I briefly introduce myself. I'm Xingyue Ye, PhD Associate Professor from Texas A&M University. Uh, I'm from both landscape architecture and urban planning and the Department of Geography. So my background is in urban informatics and spatial econometrics. I also edited the journals Computational Urban Science. Today I will talk about some research regarding reconstructed spatial information diffusion using heterogeneous agents and text contents. So my talk is mainly based on the fourth paper listed here. The three read-out papers also served as the foundation of my talk. So if you are interested, you can scan the bottom left code. You can go to my research gate to download the papers. So the research is supported by National Science Foundation and the startup grant from Texas A&M University. So since my talk is very much technical oriented, to avoid someone get lost in my talk, at the beginning, I will mention some take-home message. So in other words, what do you expect to learn from this talk? First is to analyze spatial information diffusion. What we need first to do is to reconstruct the hidden network structure. So I will explain why we need to reconstruct the hidden network. Second is this talk we will emphasize the heterogeneity of the propagation agents and consider the heterogeneity of text contents of information within the diffusion. So in other words, we will consider the message will be different during the propagation. We also allow the degree of infection instead of binary type. So what does that mean? Is, for example, if I ask you, do you know something? You said either yes or no. Oh, that's easy. But if I ask you, do you believe something or not? You might tell me you are not 100% believe. So that's called the degree of infection. In our reality, most of things has a gray zone instead of only yes or no. The resulting model will be a network-based multivariate recurrent event model. Network-based here means it will be a social network, but it's also located in the space. So it will be a spatial social network. To consider all the more flexibility, so I will use a non-parametric mean field equation. It derived to govern the propagation process. So, and a compressive sensing algorithm will be provided to infer the hidden information. So this talk will be, first I will introduce the motivation and the current research gaps in the spatial information diffusion. Then I will outline the methods which have been under development with a group of my collaborators. This method will be used in synthetic data, which is simulated data, and as well as in the real world data, tweets. At the end of my talk, I will point out the contribution of this method and its limitation, as well as the future work. First is why we need to do this research. First is we want to uncover the mechanism that governs the spatial propagation of information diffusion. Knowing the mechanism is important. So yes, there's many papers talk about just predictor. how the message will spread, but we also want to know why it spreads, why the message goes viral. At the same time, everyone knows we have increased the availability of large datasets extracted from online social media. It allows us to know much better how the news and or rumor or disinformation or misinformation spread in the real world. So it allows us to do some verification. So there is certainly some research gaps. First is the information diffusion often is treated as happening on the social network, such as a friendship network and a follower network. So we use, in many research, use your friends on the network, on your tweets or in your Weibo or in your the other Instagram to count it as how the message is spread out. However, the reality is a propagation, a real propagation is not observable. For example, you are not friends of a big name. For example, the former president, Donald Trump. You are not his friend, but you can read many of his news from the YouTube, from many newspaper, from many other channels. If you talk about him, not necessarily you retweet him or follow any of his tweets. So in other words, now we have many channels. Even your friend called you by cell phone, then you typed some message based on the news you got from your friend. As a researcher, I have no idea how you get this message, so I cannot get it from your current social network. One more thing you might notice is many times we have much closer relationship with our family members, but many times our family members do not appear very heavily on our social networks. I mean the online social media platform. So that's the reason is the full propagation network is never fully observable. From the more modeling perspective, many current research mainly rely on a latent assumption that the information content homogeneity being propagated. For example, we just look at how a single, for example, based on a hashtag or based on keywords, you want to check how certain messages spread out. However, information diffusion relies on a large class of text contents. Many tweets or many articles or many Weibo are talking about the similar thing. So together they push the spread. It's not only one single text content. Second is propagation certainly is moves across the network. However, quite a few research focus on the feature-free networks. The reality is that information propagation is more likely to occur in a spatial social network where space and place influence the network topology. A good example is I did some research on the wildfire in California. And if you are people outside of California, since you have no feeling and you don't quite experience the wildfire. So when California had any wildfire, you might not feel interested in tweet these messages because the wildfire is very local. It's very much relevant to California, right? It's not a national event. Or a national event for an election, presidential election, or now talk about the vaccination of COVID-19. That's a more national event. So for that is it more like will not be very much is limited by where you are by location. So that is this kind of spatial social network is not very well studied in the current literature. The other thing is many of the propagation analysis is about the binary. The binary means either you are infected or not infected. However, even an agent is affected or not is not always very clear, right? So a good example is if you look at a person, COVID-19, do you think this person is infected or not? It's hard to say. Maybe it's only 20% infected or 30% affected. Only it becomes to a certain level, it will be diagnosed. So that's a similar thing in many social phenomena. We have some gray zone instead of only black and white. So the method we are going to use is, yes, we have an assumption is we are in like and when we have this kind of the diffusion and each node or each agent will get exposed to a group of text contents. And in this procedure, clearly we see there is an interesting thing about between information and geography. So yes, though when we talk about the information diffusion, we look at the textual heterogeneity, the different text. But you know, some text is really like we will raise lots of attention in certain location versus in other place. For example, when you initiate a topic in a small city, maybe in this small city, the topic will not go very far. Then a big city, a person know this topic and that person picked up this topic and spread it in New York or in Chicago. Then because this message is talking about people in New York or in Chicago, caught the attention from many other large cities at the similar level, then they will go to retweet this kind of message. Then the information will diffuse across urban hierarchy. So, and during the kind of the information diffusion, we also notice there's something called recurrent event models. So in case some of you do not know what does a recurrent event mean, it's an event that recurs at intervals. Like something will keep happening, right? So a good example is migration. If someone will move from one region to another, then come back. And for those who are not very familiar with how to reconstruct the kind of the network, as I said, we need to reconstruct the network because a propagation network is not observable. So a typical way we do is use the mean field equation. The mean field is mainly from physics and probability theory. The mean field theory studies the behavior of high dimensional random models. Okay, so that's something it defined it here. Notice that dt here on the left of the equation. So for that is you know the where the mean field term is showing on the right side of the equation, and for that is to generalize that is we know the lambda t will be close to 1 because we understand the information diffusion is continuous, but to simplify the procedure, we consider it discrete, right? So then you will see the snapshot at t and t plus 1. You will see the information and the change. So you might see there's two clusters because, as I said, I will consider the text heterogeneity. So to simplify the representation, I only use 5 nodes. You can consider these are 5 persons. And these 5 persons will experience the same the two different text contents. So then now the problem technical challenge for reconstructing the hidden network among that is the discrete nature of the infection status makes both the left and the right hand sides of the mean field equation I just showed here, like the equation 1, is difficult to be, is unknown, resulting in the network topology being unsolvable. So for that, we need to do the approximation through the spatial property of the network and the power of the kernel density estimation. So you might wonder, how does the spatial property of the network will function here? I give you a simple example. For example, you predict I will do something. Actually, I don't do, but you find out that my neighbor do the thing, my neighbor do something exactly what you predict me to do. Then I will ask you, do you think the model still holds? If you want everything to be absolutely accurate, I will tell you then your prediction level, the outcome will be very low. However, if you find out, though you cannot predict me very well, but you can predict my neighbors, or predict someone close to you, close to me, very accurate. Is almost accurate as you're supposed to predict me. You are successful, right? So in other words, it's a similar ways. If you predict, I will buy something. Actually, I do not buy. But the same accuracy level fall upon my close friend, then you are still successful. The reason is, if my friend purchases something which is I supposed to buy, then he or she will influence me through the close friend circle. It's very possible later I will also buy, right? So it's a similar thing. If you predict my house price will go up, but for some reason I didn't reveal, I don't want to sell my house. You didn't see any house price become reality, but suddenly my neighbor want to sell the house, and because my neighbor has a similar building structure like mine, and his price fulfills your prediction. So that means your prediction is still successful. That's a logic here. So that's a logic is when you are building this T period observation, the key issue is we will incorporate the node feature. So what's a node? If in a spatial social network, in a social network, if it's an agent, a person, this person definitely have socioeconomic profiles. But if I also have the latitude or longitude, then I also know where this is located. So if you know where the node is located, you have two things immediately relevant. First is this node. This x, y coordinates can tell you how far this x, y is away from the other x, y. Why is it important? For example, if two cities are very far away geographically, what will make the news between them to be commutable? The most possible thing is there's a national event, then regardless how far you are, if you are the same nation, you will know what happened. Then when distance matters is if it's a local event, right? If something happened in one city, but the event is very local. For example, there is a traffic accident. If there is a very small traffic accident, it will not become a national event. However, if the two cities are so close, maybe for city A downtown has a traffic accident, city B will know that. The reason is someone from live in city B go to work in city A, then that person come back to city B will talk about, yeah, I saw the traffic accident, or I heard my office mate talked about the traffic accident. So that's the reason is when we bring in these location and the relevant attributes can be linked to this kind of location, it will enrich the prediction. For sure, it will increase the accuracy. So then we use that to test with our synthetic data. Why we test with synthetic data? It's called data generation process, because if you immediately use in the real data, the outcome might not be trustable. For example, if your model is very good, however, when you get the data, at that time there is another big event occurred. You have no idea that event occurred. Then it distorted your information diffusion procedure. You use that data which is influenced by some unknown reason. How you can even can persuade yourself to put the trust of your outcome, right? In other words, in the real world, when I know some of you are doing the socioeconomic modeling. When you do socioeconomic modeling, on the left side is your prediction. On the right side is a group of indicators you believe will influence the outcome. But you can never guarantee if there is something very important that happened, but you do not have that kind of indicator. So if your data happened to occur during that period, then the result is not trustworthy. Because, in other words, your model is polluted by some unknown factor. So if we use the data if it's simulated, so you know everything from beginning, so there shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so what is the synthetic we do is, if we can have something we know it's a ground truth network, we can come up with this kind of network. Then we simulate the propagation process by iterating the equation of mean field model I just showed you before, equation 1. Then we clean the simulation model results into the form of t period observation. That's also showing on as equation 2. Then we suppose unknown, then we from the synthetic data to get the estimation result. We do it again and again. We will get the predicted propagation data. So how we get it started? For a ground truth, we can initiate the diffusion process by randomly drawing 20% of the nodes as initially infected nodes, then set the number of their infections uniformly as 1. Then the verification procedure can be implemented. So easy, and also, as I mentioned, how I can bring the network topology into that. So if since it's a spatial social network, any node has a 2-dimensional features XY coordinates. So then the edge weight between the node X and node Y is negatively proportional to the standard Euclidean distance. Why? So the reason is the far away between two cities, there will be more cost for the information to be delivered. So you might argue is now if I send a message from Washington DC to Paris, it take less than 1 second. Why the distance matters? The distance matters because social network matters in distance. What does that mean is there is some research saying about 70% of our social network is within our driving distance. Only if you are a very big name person, you might know many people all over the world. But for most of people, 70% of our close contacts are within our driving distance. The reason is it's financially costly to keep the friendship. So if only believe me, when you stay in a city for a long time, most of your friends will be in that city, right? 70% you can go back to check your whether 70% of the persons you frequently interact are living in the same city with you. So that's a social network. Why social network is important for diffusion? Because many of our what you learn, what the news you get, many of that is from your friend circle. So for that is a location, your distance matters, XY coordinates matters. One more thing will make this matter is many event is local event. For example, as I said, in each city have their local newspaper, right? Why is it no local newspaper? Local newspaper is the news is only appealing to the local people, and we do have some national kind of the newspaper like in China, 人民日报, or in United States, Washington Post. These are more like a national level or international level newspaper. But each city has its local newspaper. Local newspaper, it means events is only appealing to local people. So the diffusion of these news are more likely will be within the driving distance of the city. It means for those people who live in that city and work in that city will be interested on that. One more thing is when we do a simulation, we also consider the sparsity of the network. What does the sparsity of the network mean? Is, for example, if in your class you have 30 students, when you just enter the class for the first 1 week, you might not know all of your classmates. You will begin to know who sit beside you or in front or back or left or right? So about after a while, after one semester, you will know everyone in your class. That's called from sparse. At the beginning, you only know one or two friends. Towards know everyone in your class, it will become from a sparse network become a dense network. It's possible because first it's a small network, small size of people. You eventually you will know all the rest 29 students. If you study like in Texas A&M University, we have over 70,000 students. Can you know all of them? For sure, no. But if you interview the 70,000 students in Texas A&M University, one student might know about 50 or 70 students, right? Or go to 100 students, or someone is very popular, maybe know more than 1,000 students. But for sure, you will not know, any person will not know like 17,000 students. It's impossible. You cannot keep so many friendships. So that means if I use that to build a matrix, it will be a very sparse matrix. So our reality is we have the sparse network. So that means most people don't know each other, right? Most people don't know each other. So in the reality, in the simulation, what we do is we set up a threshold of 0.5. For any edge which is below 0.5, we will set it to become 0. So then we will generate many 0 links. So that will be close to the reality. Then when you get this network data set up, now the challenging thing is what you want to think is because you need to verify your model. When you verify your model, there's two ways to verify. One is to verify the absolute success rate. What does absolute success rate is? If I have real data, then I have simulated data. They need to be absolutely 100% same. Then I will say it's successful. It's successful. This is called absolute rate. But as I said, the success rate, absolute success rate is too difficult to get. We need to relax this kind of success rate to the neighborhood level. what does neighborhood level mean is if you, for those who have learned spatial economics, as a good example is if I go want to when I was a student, I want to rent an apartment, and I knock the I cannot find the landlord. Then what I do, I ask students who live nearby, I ask them because I want to rent a one bedroom, one bath. Then I cannot find the landlord, or I don't know how I can negotiate the price with the landlord. What I will do is I will ask the other students who live nearby, what's their rate of one bedroom, one bath. So what the easiest way is I get their price and get the average, right? So that's how what we do. Sometimes we don't know what's a price or the value of the focal unit. I will look around for their neighboring unit. So since we are doing this for the spatial economics, so why we cannot do this for prediction? If I cannot predict you, I can predict your neighbor. If your neighbor can have the similar outcome, the prediction is also okay. Right? This is called graph-based accuracy. So it's called a normalized average graph distance between ground truth and inferred propagation data set. So this will relax our verification to more socioeconomic reality. In our real world, is we use this network to approximate the prediction for the focal point. So then we do accuracy when choose a different number of nodes and the observation. First, you might be surprised how. So we have such a high accuracy level, is almost 0.99. How is possible? The reason is, yeah, it's possible is because I use simulated data. I know exactly how the data is simulated. So it can be data generation process is known. So the prediction should be okay, but even that you see there is a divergence when we have the number of observations go up. So when you have more observation go up, definitely your accuracy level will drop. A good example is, for example, you need to go to randomly sample to check the whether the efficiency level of a product. The more you check, definitely you will get more some deficient kind of products, right? At the same time, you will find out there are four different lines. The purple line, the number is larger than the other line. So it means, so just to give you an estimation is, it looks like if you have more like nodes, I mean, you more large samples, the accuracy level will be higher. So that's encouraging. It means if I use this accuracy level, this model is, I will not vary, is I have the largest spatial social network to estimate. Then I use a success rate. See, now if you use the success rate, it drops very fast. For the n equal 1,000, now it dropped, the success rate dropped below 0.5. So in other words, the success rate is now become less than 50%. So that is different from what we saw in here is the large sample, large node number of nodes is more accurate, but here is a larger the node number will lead to become more inaccurate. That's understandable because success rate is we try it to be 100% match. Definitely, if you have more this kind of the number, everything will drop, right? Because you want 100% accurate. So then since we use a synthetic data, now we go to use real data. But as I said, the real data, to be cautious, real data when you study the information diffusion of real data. For that data set, you cannot guarantee during the same time period there's no other events distract the people's attention. It's very possible. So that's the reason first we'll test the synthetic data to make sure the results is meaningful. Then we will go to we have a confidence. Then we go to use real data. For the real data, I will use an example, which is for those who live in United States or Europe. You might know that in 2017, there is a rally happening in uh, Charlottesville, in where the University of Virginia is located. There is a rally called the United Right Rally. Did you see some very strange flags inside, right? So what they do is because there's a white, silver, kind of they are silver ratios, those people who don't want to allow the kind of the controversial debates about remove the kind of the Confederate monuments throughout the country. So in response to Charleston church shooting, Charleston church shooting in 2015. And what happened is this turned into a violent after there is some crash in the rally. And at that time, 30 persons got heavily injured. Then after that, in several days, there's many tweets talking about that. But definitely you see the it going to peak, go up to the high level, then all the way go down. The interesting thing is what happened in Charlottesville, which is where the University of Virginia located. It's near Washington D.C. But the were cities which really pick up the topic at the beginning: the Los Angeles, New York, San Diego. And after a while, it began to spread in the United States, spread into many other cities in United States every day it spread. So at that time, we pick up 26 cities. You will find out 26 cities. The most activated data in each city is follow up that day is Los Angeles and New York is kind of infected at that time. Then the next day, go to more cities and August 14, much more cities. Then after that, there's no other city. Then the last city come in, the Honolulu. So at that time, we use some simulation tools to simulate how this message is spread, try to fit the model. We only use infected or not infected as that definitely is a limitation. I would say how we will go beyond the limitation, because that limitation is we say okay, LA or New York is if it's infected, we say yes, otherwise no. But itself does not work very well for policy, because you cannot say one city is infected, right? You cannot say it's a binary by binary type. It should be is a countable infection status. So, but anyway, we come up with some idea going, yes, we think an event will, if they want to catch attention, we need to have called the public attention value. The largest public attention, if it goes always to one, that means it's a national event. But what happened is when we use the public attention value, every time it increase about 0.01, we will find out when the public attention value close to 0.25 or 0.29, then the error is smallest. So we use that to reconstruct the diffusion of this message in the US. Later, we use a location to that. So you might notice there is the yellow consider the no location, no geography effects. But when you put these blue lines, the blue and the green line, and the error drops. Why? Because in the here is a blue line. Blue lines we consider the diffusion will be within 150 miles of the city. And if you go beyond that, it will be then it will be 10% of the rate dropping rate. And the in this part is we utilize the 210 miles, okay, as a cutting threshold, and then also use different dropping ratio. So you will see, yeah, so if you consider the location information, the accuracy rate actually increase. But as I said, this work, that's also published in one of my papers in one of the 4 papers I list at the beginning. But in this research, we go one step further. For the tweets, we do a classification, classify them into 2. The cluster 1, 2 class 1 and class 2. The difference between class 1 and class 2 is class 1 is more kind of calm down, is more calm tones, and class 2 is more radical. So in other words, we want to see how the cities or human, in this time we also turn from city to human being. We experience 2 different types of the messages, but actually they are talking about the same thing. This time we pick up, use all the 20,000 unique users. You can consider users as nodes in the network. And we also assume that's only for 7 weeks, for 7 days also. We assume within 7 days, those people do not have a heavy relocation. We assume they still stay local. I mean, this assumption should be okay because usually you will not see 20,000 people within 7 days suddenly move to somewhere else. And for test our model, we use 5 attributes of the users because in Twitter account you will get how many friends of this user, and how many people follow this user, and how many posts this user has did before. I mean, definitely, if you have more posts, it means you are more active in the communication. And we also use the latitude and longitude because we use latitude and longitude here use it as a proxy for the your geographical context. Many other data can be linked through the XY coordinates. And we compare our methods with another paper which published in Nature Communication. This is a reference 8 here. So for the accuracy level, that one is already come to about 90%, but our is 3% more than that. And a very interesting thing is in the success rate, we're about 10 times higher. So you might wonder is success rate at the beginning. If you remember well, let me go back here. Success rate in your synthetic population, success rate at least does not go below 0.4 or 40%. Though I use 1,000, you can consider if I use 20,000, it will drop more. But you can, but logically, you will not drop so sharply to the 5%, right? Or this is even worse, it's below 1%. Why success rate is so low? As I mentioned, in the reality, when even we are talking about the people's discussion of the this rarely. But you at the same time, there's many other things going on. The other things also distract your attention. So, but we definitely cannot get all the other events. So they exactly exist in the reality will pollute your data is for sure. So that's a good example of the pollution. But even have the pollution, our outcome is better. And one thing that make us to feel happy is first we further prove accuracy level will be at least beyond 90%, and our model is better than the benchmark here. So it will allow us to go to the a much broader future work. We can include many different information types and the socioeconomic features of agents. Right now, you XY coordinates because XY it means XY coordinates matters. Through that, we can add more features related to the XY coordinates. And we also notice the countable infection status is better than binary. Why? Because this paper is based on infection binary. Our is based on countable infection status. So countable information, countable infection status, you can consider it is something between 0 and 1. It's not only 0 and 1. You have many other numbers between 0 and 1. Something like that. It's like you can say not only white and black, you have many gray colors between that. And since we use two clusters, right? We use here we use two clusters. But certainly we can make more clusters. So it will allow us to extend our method to multi-layered diffusion procedure. And we do have the limitation here, but it also serves a very nice possibility for future work. First is in our text classification. We get the trace data, and this classification remains unchanged during the diffusion procedure, but actually it will, right? It's like a disease. Like now everyone knows the COVID-19, after it spread, the COVID-19 type will change when during the spread. You have more different types. So that's a reality. So we need, if we could, but that one, this model, dynamic model can be incorporated into our equation. A second thing is we also assume if you like this viewpoint or does not like this viewpoint, it's only a matter to what extent you like or not like. We didn't consider your idea will change. For example, maybe someone at the beginning agree with the rally, but later find out many bad guys came into the rally, destroy the property, or kill people, or do some very bad things, and your perspective changed. At the beginning, you support, and later you less support, and eventually you totally go against this activity. So that has not been used in this work, but certainly it can be incorporated into the future work. If we go one more thing, why this research will become more and more popular is, as I pointed out by a famous science paper called Life in the Network, the coming age of computational social science. It argued that the field is emerging that leverages the capacity to collect and analyze data at a scale that may reveal patterns of individuals and group behaviors, right? That's what we are doing in this presentation. We review the patterns of individuals. So it actually formed some new research direction called human dynamics based spatial social network analytics. Fundamentally, humans are the central element connecting spatial and social networks. When we were born, we were born into two networks we cannot select. but we have to change. We might need to change. So many people struggle to change later. We were born into a geographical system. We cannot select by ourselves. For example, someone was born in large city like Shanghai. Someone was born in a very remote rural place. And because you were born in Shanghai, from your childhood, you might know more about digital technologies. And if you were born into a very rural, remote countryside, and that place is very poor, and your neighborhood, in your childhood, you didn't get a chance to know many new technologies, and later you might not have the same opportunity to compete with people who are from the large city. So that's the geographical network where you're born affect you. At the same time, simultaneously, you were also born into a social network because you cannot select your father and mother. You might were born into a millionaire's family. So starting from your childhood, you were sent to many different training classes. And since you were young, when you were young, you already traveled to many countries. Or you might born into a very low income communities. So, but over years, you have to, through your personal efforts, you want to move from one place to the other place. And through marriage, through your personal move up in your career, you might change your social network, but your spiritual and social network are were with you at the beginning, and you will move through these networks. So that will totally affect how you perceive some news. How, you, for example, the same news came to you 10 years ago versus now, you might have totally different opinions. So this will make our modeling more realistic. So towards the end of the, I want to acknowledge again all of my collaborators. And in these, I have many other relevant, many other papers on the spatial social network science. I only pick the most relevant one at the bottom. The other three grayed out papers are uh, have some similar or have some relevant uh, things to the fourth paper here, because the fourth paper were built upon the three great papers. And I also put the scan code here. If you scan that, that will go to my ResearchGate webpage. If you have anything want to download, just send a request through the ResearchGate. So that's all for my presentation. And any questions and any discussions are very much welcome. Thank you. Okay. Okay, I see some questions come here. PPT 11. Okay, let me see my PPT 11. PPT 11. Yes, the PPT 11, the paper has been published. That's a paper which is the fourth paper I listed in my acknowledgement. Okay. What is success rate? So the success rate is let me bring up. rate. Right. Success rate is that's a way to measure the accuracy of our model to calculate how many nodes have the same propagation status between origin and estimated propagation data. So this is absolute success rate. So in other words, for each node, only if the infection process of all text types are exactly the same between original and estimated propagation data, we can mark this node as successfully estimated. Any more questions? Thanks. Thanks. 好，我现在也用汉语讲一下，因为刚刚在做报告的时候，我还没看到他们反馈过来说讲中文也好，我反正前面一直都讲英语了，那用中文很快讲一下，就是说，大家如果对这个东西感兴趣，我在这个最后一页的时候啊，我再一次 share 一下 screen 啊。大家可以看到，在最后一页的时候，我把文章列在上面。这4篇文章里面，其实我今天讲的最主要的是当中的这第4篇文章，所以今天讲的很多公式都是从第4篇文章来的。但是呢，前面的这3篇文章都构建了这第4篇文章的基础。所以我把前面3篇也放大，但是如果你没有时间，就只用看第4篇文章，它基本上涵盖了我今天讲的事情。如果你还有点时间，你可以看看这个2018年的这篇文章，这个还有代码的这篇文章，就其实都有代码了。大家如果希望要复制啊或什么，就跟我们讲。对，你如果想要知道我更多的这些文章的话，你可以到去 scan 这个 code， 可以到我的 ResearchGate 的那个网站上面来，因为我大部分的文章都全文放在那，如果你没找到，就向我发出要全文的 request， 我会很快回应的。空间社会网络一直是挺有用的一件事情，就是因为我们的现在的做那个计算社会科学或者计算城市科学，现在不是说提倡以人为核心吗？因为以人为核心有一个其实一直要观察的是人跟人之间是怎么互动的，人跟环境之间是怎么互动的。现在人跟人之间，人跟环境之间互动，很多时候就会说在留下电子的痕迹，是吧？留下那个 digital 的 footprint 有电子脚印以后啊，那电子脚印基本上代表着一种 interaction， 就是说这种很少有人自言自语，基本上都是有种互动。那这种互动背后必然有网络。以前的很多网络的分析因为不怎么太多的考虑到地理空间，就是网络科学这方面很发达，但是在地理空间上面考虑地理空间还是不多，因为你考虑到地理空间，你不只是告诉你两个距离有多远，因为地理位置还代表着代表了当地的情况，就像我说的，地理代表了2层意思，一个是我们两个之间在空间上有隔多远。空间上多远，这个从某种意义上代表了一些信息传递的代价。第一是信息传递的代价，第二是这个2个信息是值不值得传递，是吧？这是一个。你如果我们2个距离很近的话，你不用花多少力气，信息就已经过来了，因为我们两边都有很多人，每天都来来往往在上班工作的。还有是 地理还代表了我当地的一些社会经济条件啊，因为还有比如说有的信息在有的地方就特别受欢迎，比如说在美国的密西根有个城市叫 Dearborn 这个城市，每次中东有什么新闻，Dearborn 就反应的特别激烈，特别热烈，就是中东啊。为啥？因为墨尔本是阿拉伯人在除了中东以外，阿拉伯人最集中的地方就是密西根的第二本这个城市，所以你肯定的会跟中东有关的新闻在那边特别受欢迎，或者特别会被讨论。那他那个地点就不只是因为一个地点了，因为那个地点上集聚着对这种新闻感兴趣的人。是吧？所以为什么空间社会网络这一块有很多可做的？通过这样一个开放性的模型，你可以把很多东西放进来，这样的话，你的那个分析的结果会更加的精准。看看大家还有什么问题？嗯、那行，好，谢谢大家，谢谢大家，嗯。